Hello and welcome to Organ Miniatures, a weekly video series aimed at demystifying the organ. I am your host, Hlebinsky. Let's begin. In the last couple weeks, we've learned about the stops on the organ and the couplers that allow you to play everything together. If you missed either of those videos or any of the other videos in this series, you can find links to them in the description. Now, as I've mentioned before, there are literally millions of different possible stop combinations. But trying to manage all those stops and make changes in the middle of the piece can often be a challenge for organists. This instrument alone has 61 stops, and if you suddenly need to go from very loud to very soft in the middle of a piece, that's a lot of stops to have to push in at one time, and composers frequently don't write in long pauses to allow the organist to do this. If you've watched any of my arrangements, you may have noticed that the sounds coming from the organ change frequently. Now, while this is not the case in all organ music, it frequently happens that you need to change stops at least 2 or 3 times within a piece. So, how do we manage to change stops on both sides of the console without disrupting the music? Well, that's where these little buttons underneath each of the manuals come into play. These buttons are called pistons, and they allow an organist to preset stops. Now, for instance, say I was playing a piece and needed to suddenly go from a loud sound to a soft sound. Well, one of the ways that I could do this would simply be by switching manuals. But if I had all the manuals coupled together, this wouldn't be a possibility. So this is a case where I would use the pistons. So what I can do to make this work is I can set a lot of stops on one piston, and then I can set a fewer number of stops on another piston, which will allow me to make this change. Now, this is what it sounds like. Now, let's take a closer look at these pistons. Over here, we have the general pistons. These are almost always located on the left side of the instrument. These pistons control both the stops and the couplers for the entire instrument. Now, as we move toward the center, you'll notice that we have pistons located beneath each of the manuals. These are called divisional pistons, and they control just the stops that are connected to that particular manual. Most of the time, these pistons do not control the couplers, though occasionally they do. You will also notice that at the end of each of these rows, there are some pistons that are suspiciously labeled like couplers. That's because that's exactly what they are. Often, in the middle of a piece, there is not enough time for the organist to reach up and flip down one of the coupler tabs above the manuals. And so, underneath the manuals are the most frequently used couplers, which allows the organist to simply reach down with his or her thumb and turn that coupler on or off. Now, if we look down at the pedal board, we will find some more pistons. Located directly above the pedals are more rows of pistons. Frequently, there is no way for the organist to use his or her hands to hit a piston, and so that task then falls to the feet. Once again, on the left-hand side, we have the general pistons, and on the right side, we have pedal pistons, as well as buttons to turn on or off the couplers to the pedals. Occasionally, you will find general pistons located on both sides of the pedal board, allowing the organist easier access to a few of the generals nearer to the top of the pedal board. This is usually done for convenience. So there's your overview on the pistons. Next week, we will take a look at a unique method of volume control on the organ. In the meantime, if you have any questions about anything you've seen here today, please feel free to ask in the comments, and I will do my best to answer each question. See you next week.